Welcome to The Explainer, where we explore the intense psychological pressure of the World Cup and how the pursuit of glory can sometimes devolve into absolute chaos. We usually think of the World Cup as the absolute pinnacle of the beautiful game, right? It's a place where legends are made and entire nations unite. But what happens when the pressure cooker gets just a little too hot? When the stakes are so unimaginably high that professional, elite athletes simply snap? Today, we're going to dive into those exact moments when the fragile order of sportsmanship completely shatters on the world's biggest stage. Okay, 20. Just think about that number for a second. That is the staggering number of disciplinary cards handed out in a single legendary game. To put that into perspective, your typical football match might see, 3 or 4 yellow cards, maybe a red if things get a bit heated, but 20, that is a total statistical anomaly. That is a complete breakdown of discipline and order on the pitch. So you're probably wondering, how on earth does a single 90-minute match produce 20 disciplinary cards? We're going to unpack exactly how a prestigious knockout match completely spiraled out of control, turning into a crazy chain reaction of fouls, fights, and fury. And remember, this wasn't some fierce local derby with decades of bad blood. This was an international tournament where literally the entire world was watching. We'll see how a mix of immense pressure, early aggression, and, questionable officiating created a perfect storm that essentially tossed football out the window in favor of a flat-out brawl. Jesus Christ may be able to turn the other cheek, but Luis Figo isn't Jesus Christ. Those were the actual words of Luis Felipe Scolari, Portugal's manager at the time, right after his star player headbutted an opponent. I mean, when a team's manager publicly endorses physical retaliation over turning the other cheek, you just know the match has transcended regular competitive spirit and descended into something much darker, and for sure, far more vindictive. Let's set the scene. We are looking at the 2006 Round of 16 clash that went down in history not for its beautiful football, but as the dirtiest game in World Cup history. Nicknamed the Battle of Nuremberg after the German city where it was played, this match featured two incredibly talented squads. Now, Portugal and the Netherlands had met in the semifinals of Euro 2004, but the animosity here was on a completely different level. They walked onto the pitch in the Frankenstadion to play a game of football, but they really ended up playing a game of survival. And the escalation was just unbelievably rapid. In just the second minute, Mark van Bommel was booked, which set a pretty brutal precedent right out of the gate. By the 7th minute, Boulahrouz committed this terrible foul on a young Cristiano Ronaldo, injuring him so badly that he actually left the pitch in tears before halftime. The anger just boiled over. Portugal's Costinha was sent off right before the break for a really bizarre tactical handball. And then, right at the hour mark, Luis Figo snapped and headbutted Van Bommel. Amazingly, Figo only received a yellow card for this, which basically poured gasoline on an already raging fire. The absolutely crucial point here is that the Russian referee, Valentin Ivanov, completely lost his grip on the game, and he was forced to issue a record-breaking 4 red cards. Alongside those 4 dismissals, he handed out an astonishing 16 yellow cards. That literally set a Guinness World Record for the most expulsions in a World Cup match. Rather than calming the players down early on, the constant issuing of cards seemed to only fuel their adrenaline and resentment, leading to this chaotic match where the man in the middle was as much a part of the spectacle as the players themselves. Going into the second half, it became an absolute battlefield. Unwritten rules were broken, and 3 more players were ejected in a chaotic final 30 minutes. Just 3 minutes after Figo's headbutt, Boulahrouz was sent off for a second yellow. Then, things got even uglier. Portugal cleared the ball out of bounds so a player could get medical treatment. Now, an unwritten rule dictates the opposing team should give the ball back. Well, the Netherlands didn't. In retaliation, Portugal's Deco viciously fouled John Heitinga, which sparked a massive brawl that led to Deco's eventual sending off. Finally, in the 95th minute, Giovanni van Bronckhorst committed one last desperate foul, earning his marching orders and the game's 4th red card. But the sheer absurdity of the whole situation really peaked on the sidelines. Sent-off players Deco and van Bronckhorst, who, by the way, were actually club teammates at Barcelona, ended up having to sit right next to each other to watch the rest of the carnage. Television cameras caught the two of them sitting shoulder to shoulder in what a commentator famously dubbed the bad boys' corner. I mean, here they were, club teammates who had just been fighting a literal war against each other for their countries, now reduced to spectators, quietly discussing the absolute mess their match had become. You know it's bad when even the head of FIFA publicly blasts the referee, proving just how much of an international scandal this single match became. Sepp Blatter was absolutely outraged that the image of his squeaky clean tournament had been tarnished, openly stating that Valentin Ivanov deserved a yellow card himself. Now, though Blatter later expressed regret for the harsh comment, it really highlighted the sheer magnitude of the disaster. The refereeing was widely seen as a massive failure in match management, basically allowing the aggression to spiral totally out of control rather than stamping it out early.
Section 1. Breaking the card record. The 2022 quarterfinal chaos.
Now, you'd probably think that with modern refereeing, VAR, and tighter regulations, a match like the Battle of Nuremberg could literally never happen again. But, well, the World Cup is a funny way of bringing out the absolute extremes in human emotion, regardless of the era. In a super tense 2022 quarterfinal, Argentina and the Netherlands managed to actually surpass the 2006 madness, with the referee issuing a record-breaking 18 yellow cards. And yep, once again, the Netherlands found themselves right in the thick of it. Spanish referee Antonio Mateo Lahoz broke the Guinness World Record, and while it didn't quite match the 4 red cards of 2006, the sheer volume of cautions handed out was entirely unprecedented. So how did the 2022 match achieve this crazy record? Well, mostly because the animosity didn't end at the final whistle. It carried straight into extra time, the penalty shootout, and beyond. Cards were handed out not just to the players on the pitch, but to the substitutes on the bench, and even to Argentina's coaching staff, including their manager, Lionel Scaloni. Following a dramatic late equalizer by the Dutch, the match descended into a massive mass brawl. The tension was so incredibly thick that even after Argentina won the penalty shootout, Dutch player Denzel Dumfries received a second yellow and was sent off during the chaotic post-match celebrations. Section 2. The ultimate limit. When matches get abandoned. All this really begs a fascinating question. What actually happens if a referee just keeps handing out red cards until there's almost no one left? We saw 4 red cards in 2006, and we saw a mass accumulation of yellows in 2022. But is there a point where the governing body simply steps in and says, okay, enough is enough? Well, it turns out the rulebook has a hard limit to prevent a total farce. If a team receives 5 red cards, dropping them below 7 players, the game is officially terminated. That's the magic number. You start with 11 players. If you lose 1, you adapt. If you lose 2, you defend. But once a team drops below 7 players, the referee is obligated by the laws of the game to abandon the match immediately. No, while it hasn't happened at a World Cup yet, thankfully, this rule actually has been enforced in some extreme matches worldwide, everywhere from the English leagues down to South America. In 2002, an infamous English club match dubbed the Battle of Bramall Lane was abandoned after Sheffield United were reduced to exactly 6 players due to red cards and injuries. Over in Brazil in 2018, a match between Bahia and Vitória saw an astonishing 10 red cards handed out following a crude goal celebration, which obviously led to an abandonment. Even at the youth level, a 2022 match between France under-18s and Poland was called off when the French side imploded and received 4 red cards, reducing their numbers below the legal limit. So what should we really take away from all this? It's that under the intense, crushing pressure of representing your nation, the fragile order of sportsmanship can easily shatter. These athletes train their entire lives for just a 90-minute window on the global stage. And when tactical plans fall apart, when an opponent plays dirty, or when a referee loses control, all that immense pressure has to go somewhere. The Battle of Nuremberg and the 2022 quarterfinals show us that even the most elite, highly paid professionals in the world are ultimately still human beings, totally susceptible to raw anger and panic. It honestly leaves us wondering just how any of us would react in that absolute cauldron of competition. Would you have the discipline to just turn the other cheek, or would the heat of the moment push you over the edge? Because the beautiful game isn't just about tactical brilliance and stunning goals. Sometimes it's a pretty stark mirror reflecting human psychology at its absolute breaking point. Thanks so much for watching this explainer, and we'll catch you next time.